Recording in progress.
Hmm. So, but from your last discussion, any comments you want to share with me so that I can start reading this topic, love, compassion, and empathy? Anyone? Okay, so compassion begins at the second chakra. When love enters the scene, compassion hits a crescendo. To understand compassion, start with its opposite, selfishness or indifference. Selfishness comes from feeling of me and mine and nothing else. A self-centered state where personal fulfillment comes at the cost of others. On the other hand, compassionate people have no time to think for themselves because the idea of others is predominant. Selfishness hoards while compassion gives and gives. Despite their opposing effects, both of these behaviors stem from the source, passion, the energy that comes from enthusiasm and keen interest. If passion is misdirected by our desires, it can drag us down and lead to destructive behaviors. But when passion is directed from the heart, it helps us to evolve our consciousness towards our greatest potential for love, connection, and positive transformation. The interesting thing I want to sort of bring it out here. So here I'll tell you exactly the opposite of what you are reading. Selfishness is referring to. I'll tell you something other than selfishness, self-love. Like the in during one of the informal sessions with Chariji, the previous guide of heartfulness, somebody asked him, like, you have so many things. You are like you have managed companies, and you have done so many things in your life, and he has learned many languages. He can speak fluently. Somebody asked him, how can you do it? He said, I love myself. This self-love is the key for compassion. See what happens when you love yourself. Then he said, I want the best for myself because I love myself. I want the best clothing, I want the best life. And he said, when he was smoking in the past, he said, I used to smoke expensive cigarettes because uh, these are his words, because I want the best for myself in everything I do. So when you want the best for yourself, it is inevitable that everything around you must be best. It is not that you are just wanting the best. For everything around you, you also want the best. Because you don't want somebody next to you who is suffering and miserable, and you think of the best for yourself. So, this is what happens when there is a true love of the self. So, the fundamental difference between selfishness and love for the self is that selfishness, there is no love. In selfishness, there is no compassion. In selfishness, it's some sort of a narcissistic idea. Selfishness is a narcissistic idea. They don't love themselves. The person who loves himself, it's a very, very profound thing, this self-love. When you understand it, when you start loving yourself, you want the harmony in your family. You want the happiness in your family. You want the joy in your family, the surroundings, at your work. Everywhere you go, you're creating that atmosphere because you love yourself. Otherwise, you're bogged down. Oh, this guy is creating politics, this, that. There's so much rejection of the other when you are in selfishness. Even some little discomfort caused by somebody, you make it a very productive thing when you are in self-love. Otherwise, in selfishness, you deject, you create a disharmony with the other person, someone who is creating troubles for you. You see, there is a how the whole thing changes when you start loving yourself. So anything starts with yourself. When we are saying compassion, think about the others, you can only think about the others through yourself only. There is one, what is this guy, Yagnavalkya? Am I getting the right name? Yes. So he tells his wife that the man doesn't love his wife for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of the self. Okay. Anything is for the sake of the self only because that is your context. If I say I am helping others, who is helping others? I am. Even the help for others, thinking about others starts from you. So sometimes this um, over idea of helping others at the cost of your life, it creates a disharmony in yourself. Then the others are not going to reciprocate the way you are expecting, how much ever you help others, right? So it is very, very essential to understand this selfishness versus compassion versus self-love. In self-love, you are creating the best for yourself in you and in your surroundings. That's why, when Jesus says, love thy neighbors, unless you love thyself, there is no love of neighbors or anyone else. So you want the best for your environment. You see how it extends when there is a true self-love develops in yourself. You see the point there? So that's why don't think this compassion is something you are so eager to help others. This compassion comes out of where all your surroundings have to be in harmony for you to be in harmony. It starts from the self. Understand that. So anything, everything you do is not at the cost of the self. When that is established, then you become very practical, even in compassion and helping others, because then you don't over exaggerate. Okay. And then don't put yourself and your family in trouble on the name of helping others. So it's a good sign when you put yourself in the front and help others, it's a good sign. When you, at the cost of your helping others, it is selfishness because there is some gratification you are looking out of that. In this compassion, there is no gratification. Okay. I'll stop here because I'm kind of touching on a little sensitive and complex topic. So I want to stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Okay, I take the silence as no questions. So hope I am
Yes,
making,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead, Cliff.
Okay, so we s- everything centers around self-love. And
Correct.
then if you feel so compelled to help others beyond, say, your immediate family, sect and such like that, then that would be compassion. But it has to come starting from, well, I love myself, I do things the best for myself, and if I feel like doing more for others, then that's part of compassion. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. No, you're doing more for the others because you like that harmony around you. So now this others extends to your immediate friends, family, acquaintances, and beyond that acquaintances. So I mean, as it expands from your neighbors to your city to your country to your world, it expands. So there is no boundaries here in self-love, but just the compassion kind of it creates a lot of boundary. Without self-love, compassion creates a boundary.
Okay, well, most of us
Self-love,
are not by ourselves. So let us just say
yeah,
our spouse has a different, most likely has a different level of self-love and compassion.
correct.
That will lead to, I assume, a degree of friction.
Always, always. But so that here there is always a difference in the level of self-love. But it is your self-love is more important. So when that friction happens, you kind of you won't stretch it beyond a certain boundary because you're always looking at bringing the harmony back. See, a lot of times these frictions stretch beyond the boundary because of these differences, and so there it becomes selfishness. Now my words, my winning becomes more important in that argument if you're selfish. But if in a self-love, you're also looking at the point of view of the other, even if it is a wrong or a mistake, instead of correcting it, you basically accept it. So there, winning is not important. Bringing the harmony becomes very important in self-love. So the friction has to be there because, in friction, in fact, the love grows more, right? See, I mean, in my case, right, my wife talks to me in length when she's angry with me. Otherwise, it's hardly WhatsApp messages, no talking. So sometimes like prick her so that she can fight with me. And I really look forward for it because otherwise there is no conversation, right? So, there is a Hindi poetry, ghazal, what is called. It says, Ranjish hi sahi, dil hi dukhane ke liye aa. You know what it means? Even for the fighting and even to hurt me, come and talk to me. That's what he's calling the beloved for. Okay. So that's how the reality displays. It's not like every time is cozy and congenial conversations. There's always a friction, but in that friction also there is love. Okay. So we kind of think, oh, it's always have to be cordial and loving, the very romantic way of looking at things, but in practice, it's actually the opposite. But still there is love. You see that? So compassion at its zenith operates spontaneously without any conscious effort to be caring, loving, or kind. There is no selection process, no decision to show compassion to some but not to others. So in the animal kingdom, compassion is pervasive. A dog protecting a herd of sheep or goats will start barking when it sees a wolf. But often the dog gets mauled by the wolf. So, in a civilized society, compassion exists, but its radius is restricted to my own, my family, my sect, my community, and so on. So, a meditative heart dissolves these boundaries, and over time, you embrace one and all. So, this is the real compassion, the self love. Okay. But beware, I mean, in self love, you should not be destroying yourself on the name of compassion. Like when the destruction of yourself happens on the name of compassion, you are in a very your motive for compassion is something else. In a true compassion, there is no motive. Okay. So I'll give you an example. It makes sense with this example. Suppose you are at a playground, you watch the kids playing, and one kid fell down. So he immediately goes to the kid and lifts the kid up and makes sure he's all right. He or she is all right, right? And so you have shown some level of compassion over there. Next time you go to the playground, for you to show compassion, you are waiting for the kid to fall, another kid to fall. You see that's what happens in typically when you are thinking of helping others all the time. When you're thinking of helping others, that means the other has to be in trouble. Otherwise, why should you help? Right? So that's a different sort of compassion. But in a true compassion, you are in the present situation. If there is a need arises, you're jumping in then and there. If there is no need, you're looking for that need to arise. You see the difference there? So a lot of times this when is the selfish compassion is always waiting for the others to be in trouble so that you can serve them and show your generosity and your greatness. But in a real compassion, in a true self-love sort of compassion, you're just acting on the present situation. You're not really looking to help anyone. That's the difference, right? Otherwise, I have to go sit in the playground to help the kids, make them fall and help. See, you're manifesting it. That's not a good way. Hope it makes sense. So I'll just read this and then we can get into meditation. So, one of the most striking examples of ultimate compassion is Lord Jesus. Even in his final moments, he prayed for this tormenting, says, Father, 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 forgive me, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. So that is the epitome of compassion, where one empathize and forgive others without resentment or judgment. So it's so it the other way, so the way we express compassion matters. Compassion extended with a heavy heart is not the same being compassionate with cheerful and joyful attitude. A positive attitude uplifts both the giver and the receiver. It is also important to be mindful of not burdening others with our compassion. When given to those in need, it is important to ensure that they do not feel obligated or indebted. One way to do this is to serve anonymously. This can prevent formation of samskaras in the receiver. So in here it's another thing. When you're anonymous and helping, serving, there is no self-importance there. It's so there is a samskara, it's created for the receiver and the giver both. When you are in actively, So you are helping and then you are expecting a reciprocation. And trust me, there's never going to be any reciprocation. And then it creates a samskara. Oh, I have done so much for this guy, and this guy's attitude towards me is indifferent. You're creating unnecessary samskara for yourself. Each samskara is a bonding. Each bonding leads to transmigratory life. When you want to liberate yourself, we must break all these bonds. Bonds here is not, I have to leave my wife for liberation or my children for liberation or my family job for liberation. That's not living bonding. These are the bondings we are creating with the interaction with this external world. If I don't give so much importance to that reciprocation of the other person, I'm already free from the bonding. That is very important. So in self-love, you also break all those bonds, unnecessary bonds. So it gives you a certain state of mind where that state of mind, when it connects with the divine essence, it becomes and more of what you say, absorbed in that divine essence. And divine essence is nothing but love. That means the love is growing in you. So understand it from that perspective. So this love is not about helping others. The love is about growing yourself. In that growth, you also recognize this universal oneness. When it is universal oneness, all this oneness has to grow with you. So there is no just single entity growing in a true love. So that is an expansion of yourself. That's what exactly the expansion of consciousness also means. So in a selfishness, the consciousness is contracted. In a self-love, the consciousness is expanding. Okay. So I'll stop here. Uh, any questions, comments? All right, I'll stop recording.